Question. Are they still teaching judo to NYC meter maids? Or, excuse me, traffic enforcement agents? Because I just spent the past 2 days researching the 60-year history of New York's parking enforcement agents, or what have you. And I'm convinced that the top requirements should be good arches, knowledge of parking law, and knowing how to fight. And I know you're already objecting, saying meter maids suck, they abuse their powers, they gave me 50 tickets this week, yada, yada, yada. But hear me out. From the jump, this has been one of the worst civil servant jobs in New York City. From the jump. So let's jump back to 1960. Actually, let's go back to 1951, when New York City installed their first parking meters. For those first 9 years, they had the NYPD in charge of parking enforcement, which the police weren't happy doing because they wanted to focus more on crime control rather than traffic control. So by 1960, the city creates the position of parking enforcement attendant under the traffic department. From jump, disrespect, because language matters. This position, which was exclusively limited to women at the time, was titled formally as attendant and more colloquially as meter maid. Despite them being out there to enforce parking laws, attendants and maids are not positions of authority, right? So the name automatically undermines them. But forgive me for saying meter maid for the rest of this video. I'll admit it's a lot easier to say. It rolls off the tongue. But let's look beyond the job title now to the job training. For the first batch of meter maids in 1960, their 2-week training course included studying parking regulations in metered spaces and what the New York Times described as the manly art of judo and the feminine art of makeup. Judo, I get. This is New York. You have to know how to fight, especially when your job is to piss people off. Or rather, your job is going to piss people off. I misspoke. But makeup, another article described it as personal grooming. But either way, what the fuck does that have to do with my ability to read a meter and hand out tickets? Don't even get me started on the bullshit around the body weight restrictions of the job. Oh my God. Maybe I'll talk about that in another video. We haven't even gotten to what it was like for the meter maids out on the street yet. So imagine it's your first day as a meter maid in New York City in 1960. You're doing your rounds on Central Park South, and a hotel doorman sees you checking cars, and he's like, "Am I gonna have a problem with you?" I know you're not talking to me crazy. I know you're not. I would quit. Day one, I'm done. For context, hotel doormen would be tipped extra if they fed the meter for their guest, which was resetting the parking meter at a time when it was illegal to have a car parked in the same spot for more than an hour. The point is, from day one, people who, mind you, are using public streets to store their private vehicles, which is what parking is, and which is also a relatively new and wildly entitled concept. Anyway, from day one, people are being mad disrespectful to meter maids. Actually, disrespect is an understatement. The number of news articles I came across in my research that describe meter maids as being physically assaulted is crazy. Crazy. And that's just from the New York Times archives. I've read so many stories over the past 2 days about meter maids being kicked and punched and bit and choked out, and sometimes the people assaulting them are the police. The freaking police! Not just regular people, but the cops. Keep in mind, meter maids don't become part of the NYPD until 1996. So the meter maid NYPD beef goes deep. So let me know if you want me to elaborate that at another time. But for now, know that the harassment and the assaults of meter maids get so bad that by May of 1967, after only 7 years in existence, New York City meter maids staged a walkout. because they're tired of the harassment from the public and from the police. And they demand to be allowed to work in pairs. So as a compromise, the traffic department allows them to work in pairs in certain busy areas. And they said that they'd hire male meter maids and send them to the more dangerous areas. But time goes on, and the harassment does not stop. Going through the New York Times archives throughout the decades, whenever I see an article about meter maids or parking enforcement agents, it's either about someone assaulting them or the meter maids lamenting that this job sucks. Actually, there is another category of article I saw, and it's about how much money the city would make from parking violations. So that's something else to talk about. But at its height in 1980, there are reported 514 incidents of physical confrontations between motorists and traffic enforcement agents in New York City. 514. One of these articles says that the meter maids feel, quote, they're being asked to bear the burden of the city's traffic control programs while their pleas for job improvements go unheard. Even the mayor at the time, Ed Koch, acknowledges the lack of respect, saying that there are some people who drive cars and won't move their cars unless you've got a gun. But the meter maids weren't asking to be armed. They were asking that the assaults on them be upgraded to a felony. And it takes another 28 years of pleading and bleedings from more assaults for that to become codified into law in 2008. All this to say, if you want to read some egregious stories about sexism and discrimination and workplace violence, search for meter maid in the New York Times archives. And make sure you have a drink with you when you're doing that.